Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective, another episode with Mr. Brad Kellner from 1049 The Horn. What's good, BK?
How we doing, Steven? Appreciate you having me back on, man. I'm excited for another video.
Absolutely. You teased it today. If you guys haven't gotten a chance, please go check out Brad's latest video on his channel featuring Arch Manning, some Arch Manning content. Arch Manning's on the channel, but Brad talking about all things Arch Manning today. Yesterday, he did a Texas Tuesday video covering, just everything going on around the program and whatnot. So BK, especially offensively with Steve Sarkisian, you know, kind of outlooks type of thing. So guys, please go check out his content over there. Brad Kellner, subscribe on YouTube. He's getting close to 1,000 subs, and y'all know how important that 1,000 subscriber mark is to all of us YouTubers and, getting the algorithm and whatnot. So let's get the pleasantries out of the way. BK, thank you for coming on. Appreciate
Oh,
you,
thanks
bro.
for having me, man. Hey, I appreciate all the plugs for my channel, but we got to get you up to 10K. That's the goal for this video tonight. We got to stop promoting it. I want you to get there so we can stop talking about it. But
Yeah,
now you're
I want
putting
to
out
delete
great.
this graphic. I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, the next one's going to be 20K, right? Like I want to start to see a 20K graphic in the not too distant future. So make sure y'all subscribe to Fanatic Perspective if you haven't yet. Steven and Tran put out fantastic content all the time. If you're a Texas fan, if you're a Cowboys fan, if you're a sports fan, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit that little notification bell too, so
Hit the
you always
noti
know.
bell.
Yeah, so you guys always know what's going on with Fanatic Perspective. But I appreciate it, man. Always a pleasure to be on with you.
Yep. And by the way, happy birthday, John Tran. Celebrated his birthday this week, May 10th. So everybody that was out there showing him some love, happy birthday, my brother out there. Before we get started, just with a few things we want to bounce around. It's going to be a real open conversation. We always talk as if we're friends, but in a more serious manner, the passing of Jake Ehlinger, his celebration of life was today. And, as many of us have rallied together, not just in the Texas community, but the Austin community, the college football community, many of our rivals, and, kind of put the rivalries aside and just had to love on the Ehlinger family. And BK, I just wanted to tell you, Rod, Kevin, that day when the news hit on May 6th, I was in the car, not too far away, honestly, from West Campus, and listening to how you guys handled it was very professional, and it was really tough, kind of navigating, delivering news, and also dealing with your own personal emotions. So I appreciate you guys on the triple for reporting it in the manner that you did.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Stephen. And yeah, that was heartbreaking and is heartbreaking, just tragic, unfathomable, almost unspeakable. What went down last week. Thoughts and prayers with the entire Ehlinger family. My goodness, that family has been through a lot. And I've been praying nonstop for Jenna, for
Yeah.
Sam, for Morgan, for all the extended family as well. And also saying prayers to the Longhorn football program and to the Westlake community and really everybody who knew Jake Ehlinger. Fantastic kid, just a guy that lit up a room every time he was there, a guy that everyone wanted to be around, and he was 20 years old. 20 years old. That's way too young to lose your life. So thoughts and prayers to the Ehlinger family and everyone affected. And that one hurts a lot and will hurt a lot. But like you said, it was cool to see, rival schools and in the sports community just come out and show their love and support to the Ehlingers and to the Texas football program. That was nice to see a lot of people rally around the Ehlingers, but man, that one hurts. That was tough to talk about then. It's tough to talk about now, and it always will be tough to talk about, Stephen.
Agreed. And it's one of the things where you get perspective on the human element of this. Sports is just a game, and it's a opportunity for us to come together. You said it on a video before about if you're looking for pleasantries or respect in sports, you're in the wrong place. And while that's true in a lot of ways, especially on the field of battle and competition outside, I've talked about this on lives where, I said, hey, how many of y'all are married to an Aggie or married to a Sooner? Like there's many of us have blended families, if you will.
Yeah.
They're still family. They're still people, and so putting that aside, even on a place like Twitter, which can be really, really crazy and like a bathroom stall wall sometimes, it was nice to see that respect. And you know, as that fades, that's where the prayers come in. 6 months, a year, 2 years, it doesn't stop. It doesn't. And I said to you guys, I've recently been through it myself with my mother, and it does not stop. Even though Jenna will eventually get back to whatever her life will be, Sam, Morgan, like it doesn't stop. So please, guys, keep them in your prayers. And again, BK, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. Um, One of the things, just with me being in transition, as I mentioned in the video before, been moving and a lot of travel, I didn't get to share my thoughts regarding the NFL draft and coming off of that weekend where, we have multiple Longhorns selected. We still didn't have that guy go in the first round. And so one of the things, but I was impressed with the amount of guys that did get to go, right? You go through at Sam Cosmi, Joseph I, Caden Stearns, Taquan Graham, Sam Ehlinger. So really, really cool to see our guys go to that next level and be selected. Um, Probably a bit more success we've had at this level in some time. But at a school like Texas, we're looking for the first rounders. We're looking for those type of things. I want to get to that, but first, I want to ask you, of those guys I mentioned, BK, who do you like with their new team? Who do you think ended up in a really good situation for them?
Oh, I'll tell you what, I think Sam Ehlinger ended up in the perfect situation. I really don't think there was a better spot for Sam Ehlinger to land than Indianapolis for a couple of reasons. Number one, Frank Reich played quarterback in the NFL for a long time. He's a great developer of quarterbacks. He's done a great job with every quarterback he's worked with at the NFL level. So you get a good head coach who knows what it takes to be successful as a quarterback in the league. That's number
Yep.
one. Number two, you look at the Colts quarterback room, not a lot of proven commodities there. I mean, Carson Wentz is going to be the starter for the Colts, but he's coming off an embarrassingly bad season in which he got benched for rookie Jalen Hurts. New
Right.
start, Carson Wentz should have been league MVP a couple of years ago before he got hurt late in the season. The potential's still there, but man, it's kind of a risk that Indianapolis is taking. And we're not entirely sure if Carson Wentz is long for the job as QB1 in Indianapolis. But more realistically, Sam's not competing for QB1 right now. He's competing for QB2. The Colts' backup quarterback is Jacob Eason, the one-time Washington Husky turned Georgia Bulldog, or maybe it's the other way around. I think it is the other way around.
It's the other, yeah.
Yeah, there you
You're
go.
good. It's the other, yeah.
The
Finished at
transfer portal.
Washington. Hmm.
Boy, I'm already struggling with the portal, and we're just getting started, Steven. This is going to be tough to track.
They had
But
a
look,
lot of Jakes at one point. That was the part of the problem
yep,
because they
the
had
Jake
him, Jake Fromm.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. But look, he's not that good. I mean, he's only been in the league for what? This will be his second year. It's not like he has done anything to solidify himself as a backup in this league. He's not Colt McCoy. He's not a Chase Daniel. He's not any of those guys that, like, oh, he's going to be quarterback number 2 when the season starts. So Sam's got a shot to be the backup. And also, Steven, you look at what Frank Reich did with the Colts last year. The Colts had Phillip Rivers as the starter. They also had Jacoby Brissett on the roster. And
And they had a
Jacoby
package
Brissett,
for him.
he only threw 7 passes last year. They had a package for him. He was a short yardage / goal line guy, a run first guy. And that's what Sam Ehlinger is. I mean, in 2018, he was the best short yardage / goal line player for in the country. He is a great red zone weapon. So I think right away, Sam Ehlinger has a chance to be that guy. If Frank Reich wants to use that again in his offense this year, and hell, he was using that in the playoff game for the Colts last year. So there's no reason to think that that's not going to be part of his offense in 2021. And I think Sam Ehlinger has a chance to be that guy and see the field relatively early on. So I absolutely love the fit for Sam and Indy.
I think that's a great point you made about Jacoby Brissett and how he was utilized because that also speaks to, and I know people are going to, start criticizing what I'm about to say, but you also look at what Sean Payton does with Taysom Hill and how they utilize packages. Coaches are unapologetic about it, especially if the person can present the threat to throw the ball, whether it's short yardage or in red zone areas. Those are areas where Sam is strong enough to be able to, complete a pop pass or whatever and still be working on his development on the back end because he is an extremely hard worker. We know he's going to do everything he can to at least get his mechanics to where they're as good as they can be so it can maximize his value as a passer. Now, how he develops in terms of being, progressions or whatever, I don't know. We've already been asking questions about development at Texas as is, and I think it's fair to even ask with the quarterback in the situation that he was placed in terms of his development. Oftentimes they just laid a lot at his feet from a physical manner and said deliver, but how did he get better? Did he even get better year over year with some of those NFL type of skills? I think it's a great situation for him where he can come in, provide value, assuming he makes the 53 and whatnot. But the president's already there with Jacoby Brissett the year before, and Jacoby Brissett now going to the Miami Dolphins. I think it's a really, really good situation for Sam Ehlinger. And Frank Reich has a great track record with quarterbacks in general, which is why they're the team that can afford to take the risk with Carson Wentz, especially assuming their history. But the other thing, Brad, is Carson Wentz's injury history. Let's
Yeah.
say Carson Wentz is playing well, right? There's no guarantee that and now we playing 17 games? And people need to start etching this in their brain. There are more football games now. So you may assume that he can get back to form under Frank Reich. Is he going to play all the way through? And to your point, are you trusting Jacob Eason? Jason Eason, great arm. At one point was a 5-star recruit. Thought he was Matthew Stafford, but he's a statue. It's a big old statue. So some of those things that Sam Ehlinger can do can be intriguing in that particular scenario. And he's a person. The last thing I'll say on Sam, if he gets in an NFL game, he's not going to be shook. There's just like it's one of those things where he's going to be prepared. He's not going to be shook. He may not be able to compete from an arm talent perspective and all these other things, but he'll at least know what he's looking at and he'll be able to execute what he's being asked to do. The other person I wanted to comment on was Caden Stearns. Vic Fangio over there at Denver, defensive-minded coach. I like how they've developed their safeties over the recent years. I think Caden Stearns, the biggest thing he needs, and no pun intended, going to Denver, is a breath of fresh air. Just, you like
well
that?
done. That was too easy.
He needs a breath of fresh air. Getting over there, Denver Broncos, very, very different scene from the pressure cooker that is Austin, Texas. Not that it was a pressure situation for Caden, but the injury stuff, he became the kind of the person that the fans really were getting frustrated with because he had so much he showed us his freshman year. And you look at the problems that we've had developing at Texas, and then all of a sudden the NFL figures out how to get the good out of some of our guys. That's another person I'm looking at in terms of I like the fit where he ended up. I 5th round, but I like where he ended up.
I think it's a great fit. I agree 100%. And Rod Babers, my co-host, lifetime Longhorn DBU guy, thinks that it's a great fit too. And he thinks Caden Stearns is going to have a better NFL career than Texas career. And I tend to agree too. I mean, you mentioned Vic Fangio, great defensive mind. Some of the safeties already on the Broncos roster. You've got Justin Simmons, who's an all-pro, and you've got Kareem Jackson, who's been in the league forever as a safety. So a couple of great guys for Caden Stearns to learn from. Yeah, I think it's a really, really good fit for him. I think he is going to make the roster for Denver, and I do think he's going to have a solid career at the NFL level. Sometimes tough for a guy taking on day 3, but we know the potential's there. Hell, we saw it from Caden Stearns his freshman year. Injuries, maybe not being 100% bought into Tom Herman's program over the last couple of years kind of led to that regression, but I still think there's a damn good football player somewhere within Caden Stearns. I agree with you. I really like the fit in Denver.
The one thing, so our two guys that I felt like when the season ended, we thought at least one of them would go in the first round between Samuel Cosmi and Joseph Osai. And shout out to Samuel Cosmi and you, for all the people that wanted to complain about dudes opting out and, hey, you're leaving your teammates behind. Go take a look at the video of the entire Texas offensive line in his living room when he got drafted. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
For all the people that were talking that noise about him quitting on his team and whatnot, his entire team was in that living room when he got the phone call from the Washington football team. So that family aspect, everybody understands what common goals are for each individual player on the team. But in terms of their situation, I'm and this may be controversial to say because I believe Washington signed Charles Leno, the left tackle, to a deal today. I don't love the fits that either one of them went to. I was hoping if they fell, they would go to good teams. And not that Washington is a playoff. They made the playoffs last year. The Bengals were terrible. And I hate that my boy Osai went there. It's opportunity and hopefully to play sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But that's a guy like I'm like, man, if you're gonna fall, I want you to go to like the Patriots or the Steelers or something like that, or the Bills. Not these crap ass teams. It sucks when they fall like that and then they go to these organizations and then all of a sudden they start doing weird stuff. Next thing you know, you see Sam Cosmi playing guard or something weird. I just, and maybe that's just my bias as a Cowboys fan of not wanting, I don't know what it is, BK, but I don't like their situations personally for me.
I'll tell you what, Joseph Osai getting selected by the Cincinnati Bengals was very bittersweet for me. Now, it was sweet because he was the 69th overall pick, and I was pumped. I mean,
Nice.
that was so nice. So nice. I was like celebrating that at my place. But Cincinnati is where players go to die. I mean, that franchise sucks so bad. And maybe they've turned over a new leaf with Joe Burrow. And look, maybe
They
now that
tried
they've
to
got,
kill Joe Burrow last year.
I know. And Marvin Lewis is gone, so maybe that will change things. Although I think Zach Taylor could be fired after this year. Like it feels like that guy's already on the hot seat. So, yeah, I'm with you. And you talk about with Caden Stearns, he's got a couple of really, really good guys to learn from in Denver. Joseph Osai does not have good guys to learn from in Cincinnati. Now, the Bengals did sign Trey Hendrickson from New Orleans in the offseason. I think he had 13 and a half sacks last
He
year.
was very
But
good on the Saints.
but the Bengals last year as a team ranked dead last in the NFL in sacks. So Joseph Osai, we know he's got freak potential. We know he's an unbelievable athlete, and he's a guy whose progression has been so linear. He's gotten better every year. I would love for him to have a number of guys that he can learn from, right? I mean, if he went to a Washington, you talk about Samuel Cosmi's situation. If Joseph Osai was getting to learn from some
Good
of those
point.
dudes on the Washington football team defensive front, yeah, sign me up for that. If he was going to Denver to learn from a Myles Garrett and a Bradley Chubb, yeah, sign me up for that. But yeah, Joseph Osai, since he scares me, I think he's a stud. So I think he's going to find a way to be a productive player at the next level. But a lot of guys who are highly regarded in college did not pan out when they went to Cincinnati. So I did hate that a little bit. I hate that he fell to the third round too. I mean, this was a guy that showed signs of being a first round pick, and a lot of mock drafts at the end of the season had Osai going in the first round. Sucks that he fell to the third, and kind of sucks that he ended up in Cincinnati, but hopefully things will turn out all right for him.
So you kind of led me right into the next thing. Why wasn't he a first round pick? Because at the end of the day, you can talk to me about his hand placement and the lack of tech. I saw dudes, you know, I saw what's his name, Odafe or whatever from Penn State. Not people that did not have sack. Owe,
Mm-hmm.
Jason, he did not have a sack last year. And I'm not the guy that's like honing in just on sack numbers. I understand pressures, what you're doing to harass the pocket, all those type of things, how you play the run, blah 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 blah. But I keep going back to the point that Princely, the brother that ended up flipping to go to Florida, made on his YouTube channel almost now a year and a half ago. He made the statement and was like, if Charles Omenihu had the same exact tape for Bama, he's going in the first 2 rounds. But his 6 or 7 or 8 sets at Texas, he's going in the 5th or 6th round. There's a perception problem. Same tape, right? Same player, same strengths and weaknesses. Just change the jersey, so to speak. I understand, yeah, you're talking about level of competition, blah, blah, blah. Texas consistently, we also don't play FCS schools either, okay? We schedule strong out of conference, and every single week they are, playing against And this, I would say the Big 12 is actually ramping up a little bit in recruiting from what we've seen in more recent years, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But the point being, I'm really, really frustrated with the perception problems at Texas because like Puna Ford was too good not to get picked.
Yeah.
Like I mean, if you watched him play one, and all the things that these NFL people say that they look for. So I think there is a thing where, I think Cosmi and Osai particularly fell victim to their coaches getting fired, and who's advocating for them with these scouts and whatnot when these guys are working with these NFL coaches and they're putting these boards together and people are putting their word on certain guys, because Joseph Osai, he could very well turn around and be, an even better version of Brian Arakpo one day, and we turn around and say, why the hell was he gone? Why did he go number 69 in the third round? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, Sark's got to find a way to change that narrative. I mean, Texas has become the bargain bin for NFL teams, right? Day 3 picks, undrafted free agents from Texas. Those guys are being overlooked by everybody, but somehow, some way, they continually find their way on NFL rosters and become impact players in the league. You brought up Puna Fort, undrafted, impact player for Seattle. Look at Deshaun Elliott, 6th-round pick, now a starting safety for Baltimore, a damn good team in the AFC. Quandre Diggs, 6th-round pick, one of the best nickel corners in the NFL,
Pro
playing
Bowler
for
now.
Seattle, Pro Bowler, late-round pick. So, yeah, I mean, that's what Texas has become. They have become the bargain bin, and Sark has to find a way to change that narrative. Otherwise, it's not going to change, honestly. It's as simply as that. So, hopefully Sark can find a way to get it done, but it's easy to negatively recruit against Texas right now by using that draft data. And I don't completely disagree with your take on, if you put some of these Texas players over the last couple of years in an Alabama jersey, in a Clemson jersey, then they go a couple of rounds higher in the NFL draft. But look, I mean, Texas, with all the coaching turnover that this program has had, with just the lack of wins that this program has had over the last decade, I mean, it's not hard to have questions about some of the players coming from UT. And Sark has to find a way to change that narrative because it's so easy to negatively recruit Texas right now. I mean, all you got to do is do a quick Google search and show how poorly Texas has done in terms of developing talent, developing blue chip talent into NFL draft picks. So
Good point.
that is a huge, huge issue right now for Texas. It's almost amazing they've been able to recruit as well as they have over the last few years with all of that information out there. But for Texas to get back to the elite, they have to find a way to develop talent, both at the collegiate level to obviously win games and conference championships, and obviously develop them into NFL draft picks too, instead of guys who are consistently going late on day 3 or not getting drafted at all.
Guys, make sure you guys go check out Texas Homer's video he put out yesterday about the first round pick, who could be the next first round pick at Texas. Obviously, our last one, 2015, Malcolm Brown. I believe our last offensive first round pick was Vince Young, which tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Our last first round offensive lineman was Mike Williams. We're going on 20 years. We're going on 20 years with the first offensive lineman, right? So these are some of the things that are out there if you just want to quickly, as you're saying, negatively recruit Texas. But check out Homer's video because he actually mentioned some of those things, some of the developmental perception issues going into his case for the top 7 players who he thinks could have a chance to go in the first round. But my point is this. I come from the school of thought that when you're projecting these teams, yes, if you're winning games and winning at a championship level, starting with your conference and above, you do get looked at in a different light. I do believe that. Not to say that people don't become first round picks from crappy programs. We know that. But my bigger point is this. You look at the usual suspects in the college football playoffs because college football right now is not that deep. Let's just be real. It's Bama, it's Clemson, it's Ohio State, and then you can rotate like Notre Dame, Georgia, and whoever in the 4th spot. Maybe I forgot somebody, but like the point being, it's a very, very small LSU. You can rotate LSU in there when they have the Oklahoma. Whoever you want to rotate in that 4th spot. But the usual suspects is Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State.
Yeah.
And the one thing that those three schools have consistently done is recruit the big boys and develop the big boys. And to me, that's an area where Texas, I think we're getting there with the defensive line, to be honest with you. I like the potential I see there, and I like some of even already the more proven guys like a Coburn, if you will. But when I look at the offensive line, and like there's just certain aspects. You look at Clemson's offensive line or LSU when they were good, or Alabama, you already know like in college football they freaking dominate the line of scrimmage so much that they're not going to have these other issues. And now other people can be showcased because I think it's also hindered to some degree at Texas other people's development. We talk about the running backs. CB hits me up all the time. Steve, we don't got 1,000-yard rushers at Texas. Outside of Foreman, the 1 year uh, um, where old boy Sterling Gilbert just decided to run inside zone a million times. So, and he won the dope. And Foreman was a beast. Don't get it twisted. I was watching the 2015 Red River game when Gerard Hurd led us to victory, and Foreman, I completely forgot Foreman busted that 70-something yard run in that game. So we knew then he was a good running back. But the bigger point is that offensive line has to get to a point where they're not just good, they're not just Big 12 good, but they're NFL talent good.
Yeah.
That's when Texas will be in the conversation with those three teams.
Agreed 100%. I mean, games in this sport are won and lost in the trenches at any level. It's not just college football. It's the NFL, it's high school football, it's peewee level. If you don't have good line play, you're not going to be successful. And look, the time period between Colt McCoy and Sam Ehlinger, everybody looked at quarterbacks for why Texas was as bad as it was, right? Now we just couldn't get a good quarterback. And yes, that's true.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and advocate for the QBs that we had from 2010 to 2017 because there were some jabronis in the mix. I mean that with all due respect. I don't know if I could say that after calling them jabronis. But a massive issue for Texas, like just as big of an issue for Texas during that stretch was not only did Texas not have an offensive lineman drafted in the first round during that 10-year period, Texas didn't have an offensive lineman drafted at all from 2008 to 2017. That's a decade, Stephen. We're talking about the University of Texas. Tony Hills was picked in the 7th round in 08. Connor Williams, 2nd round in 2017.
Round.
No offensive lineman at all in the 7th-round NFL draft for 10 years. So that right there, yeah, quarterback play, a problem. But, dude, Texas recruited running backs really, really well in that stretch. Jonathan Gray, Malcolm Brown, I think those guys had no offensive lines at all. So it's really hard to run a successful offense if you don't have good offensive line play. And as good of an offensive mind as Sark is, if this offensive line is bad this year, this offense isn't going to be that good. Like Bijan Robinson, we think he's a stud, one of the best players in all of college football. If his offensive line sucks, well, he's not going to be a Heisman contender. He's not going to be an All-American, and he's not going to do the things that we hope he does. So you absolutely need to win games in the trenches. I agree with you 100%. The defensive line is awesome. That's the deepest position on this Texas roster right now. They've got some dudes. They've got some Sunday players up front on defense. But offensive line, there are some questions there. And, Stephen, there have been questions there for nearly a decade and a half now.
It's tough, too, because with Sark, we talk about the upgrade we need to see from Herman to Sark. The biggest thing that can help Sark is the upgrade from Herb Hand to Kyle Flood.
Amen.
Kyle Flood, if he can make something, because I do think there's talent in the offensive line room. Now, do I see a Alex Leatherwood type talent where, like, I remember when Alex Leatherwood came out of high school, and that's the thing that Bama's been hitting on, and you're going to see it again with the Brockermeyers, and I hate to bring it up, but like when they got the 5-star offensive lineman 3 years later, that guy was getting flipped to the NFL. Cam Robinson was like the only one. He was like the first pick of the 2nd round. But like all these other guys, we were talking about the Bengals earlier, like Jonah Williams, and you can list the Alabama guys. But Kyle Flood more recently, Jedrick Wills to the Cleveland Browns, some of the guys that he's coached and developed. Hopefully he can hang his hat from a credibility standpoint and start to pull in some of these higher tier recruits to push the room. But in year one, for Bijan's sake and for how they're pumping Bijan, the run blocking needs to look like how it looked in the spring game.
Yeah.
They need to be savages out there, at least in the run game. I expect there to be some issues in the pass blocking game because of a talent issue. Honestly, like Jake Majors isn't that big, so there's going to be some people in the conference, Perry on Winfrey, who are just going to get up underneath it. I can live with that if the run blocking is dominant because Sark, that's enough for Sark to do everything else he needs with the smoke and mirrors for us to get by until we get the Jedrick Wills is on campus and start winning some of those bigger recruiting battles that the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world are winning. That needs to happen at Texas because to me, BK, you made this point earlier. They've recruited well for the situation they've had with the first round, the non-first rounders. But to me, you go back and look at those classes, they've recruited well enough to win the Big 12. I think they've recruited just as well as Oklahoma's recruited, in my opinion. Difference is Lincoln Riley's getting the best out of his dudes. We have not.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a next level to be that playoff champion recruiting, and that's when you're getting those big guys, those 5-star left tackles, a 5-star defensive end, like a Brian Brzee that went to Clemson last year. Like when Texas starts getting those type of dudes, and there's another dude, Sawyer, who's going to be a beast at Ohio State. For those who are unfamiliar, who looks like the third Bosa, like there's going to be some savages out there. So we have to get to the point of developing the talent we do have that I think is maxed out at winning the Big 12 for a playoff spot, and then recruiting beyond that and leveraging the success that we hope that hopefully comes. That's the only thing I can say to this point.
No, that's well said. And look, there's never a good time to have a transition year on the recruiting trail, right? Because I don't care who your next head coach is. If you're transitioning from one coach to another, recruiting's going to take a hit. This Texas 2021 offensive line class, like state of Texas, 2021 offensive line class was historically good, and Texas missed out on just about everybody. Like this year's class could have been that class. There were some dudes, the Brockermeyers, the cat Donovan Jackson going to Ohio State. There were so many talented 4 or 5-star offensive linemen from the state of Texas in the class of 2021. Just about all of them ended up going somewhere else. So that was huge. But I agree. Like Kyle Flood has his work cut out for him, but there's still some talent on this roster right now and some experience. Like losing Sam Cosmi hurts. He's been your best offensive lineman for the last couple of years. But you still have some blue chip guys, and you still have some guys who have played a lot of college football games. The question is, Steven, how much coaching do they need? I mean, we were hearing reports about Sam Cosmi leading up to the draft that said his technique was amongst the worst NFL scouts had ever seen. Like there are reports now that says Sam Cosmi might have to sit out a year because he just needs to completely relearn how to play offensive line. Like that dude is a freak athlete, great size, great strength, great athletic ability, hard worker. He's got everything you want, but it sounds like his coaching from Herb Hand was so bad that he might not be ready to be an NFL player. And that might explain why he fell as far as he did in the draft. So yeah, Kyle Flood, the hope is, Steven, it doesn't take more than a year or more than an off season to reteach these guys and retrain these guys. I trust Kyle Flood. That dude has, I mean, not only at Bama, you go back to his days at Rutgers, he was putting offensive linemen in the NFL. He had a first-round offensive lineman selected at Rutgers when he was the O-line coach there before he became the head man in Piscataway.
They were killing it with Ray Rice, opening it up for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They were, that wasn't a pun you were going for with Ray Rice, was it? Okay. I won't get you in trouble.
Nobody.
I won't. That's true. That's true. That's true. Maybe tried to, but anyways, I trust Kyle Flood, but the question is, Steven, like, can he fix this problem within the span of one off season, or is it going to take a couple of years for Texas to get to that level? They need to recruit better in the trenches for sure, but in terms of just developing, can they get there sooner rather than later?
Well, the lens of Texas, all that, they don't have time because they got swapped in for a staff that went 7-3 and finished in the top 20. There's not time to make excuses. Like Christian Jones, like they're gonna have to figure out how to get Christian Jones ramped because I'm using him in particular because he does have the size, athleticism, and footwork to where if they can figure out the consistency problems and get his strength together and deal with power better, he should be one of those guys that they flip into an all conference type of lineman. So they Bijan Robinson again, they don't have time. Like, look, you're also I know we don't play Texas A&M, but you're competing against Texas A&M when it comes to recruiting. And Texas A&M's coming off one of their best seasons, and I know people love to talk trash on this channel. With Texas fans, it's a rivalry. Let's get it. However, we must be objective people. And if you watch Texas A&M play football last year, they didn't have all these people. They still have question marks at wide receiver. People transferring out of the program at wide receiver, but they were pounding the rock. They were pounding the rock and they were throwing the ball to the tight ends, and that worked for them. And I'm not saying that's the style. That's nowhere near the style offense that we're running with Steve Sarkisian. But my point is, they established that physicality, and they do have good, pedigree on both lines that the NFL is looking for, because ultimately the conversation you want to have with those kids, and that's a conversation that they can have with other high school kids in the state of Texas right now. That's what I'm saying. Kyle Flood needs to fix it quick, at least to say, you know what, Bijan Robinson did what he was supposed to do. We blocked for him. Now we need some more savages to really get this thing on and popping. I'm cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
But this Herb Hand stuff you're bringing up about technique problems with some of the more talented guys and the NFL guys, when they dig in the film and start nitpicking on things, that can't happen anymore at our program. You never hear that about Alabama linemen or Clemson linemen or Georgia linemen. You never hear hand placement issues and why is his feet all over the place. You never hear that crap. Even some of the smaller schools don't get that rap. So we have a lot to battle on the perception front. Last thing I do want to pivot to is we've kind of loosely alluded to some of the other teams in the Big 12, but just after spring, where should our minds be as Texas fans in amongst the conference, considering what OU has, what Iowa State has, and maybe some other teams that you may have your eye on?
Well, those are the two teams right there, right? I mean, Texas is going to be favored in 10 of 12 games this year. The two games they'll be underdogs are Oklahoma and at Iowa State. OU, the Vegas favorite to win this conference, no surprise at all. Iowa State right behind Oklahoma as the second betting favorites to win the Big 12 in 2021. So the question is, can Texas be better than either one of those teams? I think Oklahoma's winning the Big 12. I don't think that's a hot take. They've won this league 6 years in a row. I think they might be the most talented team in college football in 2021. But can Texas find a way to get to Arlington this year? Can they find a way to beat Iowa State? Hell, maybe they beat OU, and that just gives them a win over Iowa State. I think Oklahoma's at least a lock to get to Arlington. I mean, it feels like that's the safest bet in the world right now. They find their way there every single year. But can you find a way to win one of those two games to solidify a spot in the conference championship game at the end of the year? So those are the two for me, Stephen. Those are the obvious choices. But the question is, I mean, where does Texas fall in the pecking order right now? Like, Oklahoma is going to be a top 5 team to start the season. Iowa State's going to be a top 10 team to start the season. Like, I don't know if Texas fans are going to be able to stomach anything below a third place finish in the Big 12. No, I'm not saying Sark's going to get fired if Texas finishes 4th or 5th in this league. He's not losing his job after year 1. But, in terms of just expectations around here, like, okay, Oklahoma might have more talent than Texas this year. They do. Iowa State, because of the super senior COVID eligibility year, and they've got everyone and their mother coming back, you could argue that they might have more talent than Texas does. But everybody else, 4 through 10, Texas has more talent than them. So will Texas fans be able to stomach anything below a third place finish? And I think there are a few teams kind of in the mix for third place. Obviously, I'd throw the Longhorns in there, but TCU. I mean, if Max Duggan can play like he plays against Texas, against the other 9 teams in this conference, then what about TCU? Because we know Gary Patterson's going to have that defense rolling. What about K-State? Remember, K-State beat OU last year. They were 4-0 before Skylar Thompson got hurt. Well, Skylar Thompson's back. They've got Deuce Vaughn. They've got some pieces. I think Chris Kleiman's a great coach. Like, that's a team in the mix too. Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, you never want to count them out. So all of those teams, it sort of feels like there's a few tiers. I'm doing a lot with my hands here. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry for
I love it. You're excited.
Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do here. It feels like there are like 3 tiers in this conference right now. And I think Oklahoma and Iowa State are kind of in their own tier. The question is, can Texas be the top team in that second tier? I think that's what a lot of Longhorn fans are looking for this year.
There's some interesting players in this conference now, too, because you've had people come in, like Tyler Shuck is in this conference now from Oregon, who's transferred to Texas Tech. And depending on how you look at some mock drafts, there's some people that are very, very high on Tyler Shuck, like first round pick type high. Not to say that Texas Tech is going to do anything with that. We know that they're still concerned about Chris Beard and whatnot. But these type of players in the conference can create problems on a Saturday. For one Saturday, when you're facing certain type of players like that, Zach Evans seemed to start to figure it out at the end of the season for TCU last year too. We know what they got with Quentin Johnston on the outside, the one that got away from Temple. So they're lurking over here. Yeah. But to the video you made earlier today about Arch Manning, Texas cannot be worse than third in the conference, or else you can forget about the Arch Manning conversation, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. They ain't coming here. That family is too smart, and they'll say, more of the same. Now, we all know that they're looking at it because Steve Sarkisian is here, and they want to be trained by the best. And right now, he's regarded as the best. And you saw what he did with Mac Jones. That's another thing. Who's going to be that next person that comes out of nowhere, the quarterback position? Could it be one of our guys? Everybody likes to, act like Mac Jones now was always going to be a first-round pick. But all I heard last offseason was, when is Bryce Young going to take his job? Now, look what happened. So every offseason, going into a new season, somebody's going to come out of nowhere. But to address the Big 12 thing, I have a message to OU fans. You guys are starting to get a little spoiled here. And what I mean by that is, I have half of the OU fans I communicate with telling me Spencer Rattler's the best player in the country, best quarterback in the country, all this. And I have the other half over here telling me that Caleb Williams is going to take his job. Which one is it? You can't have it both ways, because if you're going down the Caleb Williams route, then your special season that y'all been building up for since you got Alex Grinch and y'all needed to fix the defense, and now you feel like everything's there. Nick Benito's here, Perion Winfrey's here, we got Woody Washington ramped up. Like, y'all are loaded. Being objective, y'all are loaded on both sides. The fastest way to start derailing your season is crap like that. So take note, OU fans. Either stick with your guy. Y'all told me Spencer Rattler was the man finishing the year, and I agree. But all of a sudden now Caleb Williams going to take his job after a spring game. Yeah. Hey, I'm just saying, because I'm looking for opportunities to pull at the strings to get in there, right? Yeah. Because y'all the ones that are supposed to be the national championship favorites potentially. So I'm just, like you said, how can we get to Arlington? That's right. What I'm concerned about.
That's it. I'm with you 100%. And man, that would be fascinating. It still blows my mind that Spencer Rattler got benched in the Texas game last year. I mean, early on last season, he looked terrible, and he was not living up to the hype at all. But down the stretch, he was one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. I do think he's the best returning quarterback in all of college football. I know Caleb Williams is a stud, but man, doesn't it feel like, Steven, if Caleb Williams is playing significant snaps for Oklahoma, that means something went seriously wrong?
Yes.
Like, that either means Spencer Rattler got hurt, which would be a problem for them, or that means Spencer Rattler regressed,
playing well,
which I think would be a problem. And Caleb Williams might be all that in a bag of chips, but man, it just, to me right now, it doesn't feel like he's the guy that gives Oklahoma the best chance to win games. So we'll see. Always watching what's going on in Norman. But yeah, just that question. If Texas can finish in the top 2 in this conference this year, I think a lot of Texas fans would take that. And then, yeah, I mean, what happens if they finish below 3rd? Where's this fan base at? Where's recruiting at for Texas? I guess the good thing with Arch Manning is he's got 2 more years of high school ball.
True.
So even if Texas disappoints a little bit in year one, if the Longhorns go out and go, I don't know, 11-1 in 2022 and they win the Big 12 and this offense looks relatively similar to what Sark's offense looked like at Alabama, then I still think you'd have a chance to get Arch Manning. But yeah, I mean, the players want to see it. Like we saw it with Tom Herman. There's a honeymoon period where people are excited about the new coach. But if you don't start producing results, then recruiting goes by the wayside. Sark's got to do what he can to prevent that from happening.
Tom's honeymoon was over when Maryland happened. That
Oh,
honeymoon was over. That was a
which time?
I mean, that was like you're at the resort and somebody gets food poisoning. Like we got to go home.
On
That
day
that's what
one,
on day one.
first meal off the plane, food poisoning, done. You're going home. Uh,
Just
we,
downhill from there.
we should have
Um,
known.
we should,
Mm,
I will say this in regards to because it's not just Arch Manning, Reuben Owens, all these guys that are watching this Texas team and recruit and committing based upon Kyle Flood, Steve Sarkisian, their credibility and what they bring to the table offensively to showcase their players. We'll say this: if they finish third, and let's say they lose to Oklahoma or split with Oklahoma, whatever the situation is, and they look good. It looks like Steve Sarkisian offense. They lose at Iowa State. Nobody's mad. It's a bunch of super seniors over there. Y'all got beat by a bunch of super seniors, but you didn't lose because of some dumb shit like you know not getting a delay a game after a kickoff. You know what I mean?
right.
Like just dumb stuff, right? But if you're finishing third, but it's like, oh, our quarterbacks had lights out season, whether it's Casey Thompson, Hudson Card, Bijan Robinson was 1,500-yard back. The numbers are there, and we as fans are like, oh, we just need a few more pieces. Then that's a totally different. To me, that's a totally different conversation. And you didn't
Yeah.
lose to anybody you weren't supposed to lose to. I think
Yeah.
that's a totally different. I think that's digestible for the UT fan base for year one.
Oh,
So
I mean,
how does
you're
it look?
you're you're saying 10 wins, Steven. I mean, that better be digestible in year one for this fan base. With a first-time starter at quarterback, Texas returns the least production out of anybody in the Big 12. Shoot, sign me up for 10 wins right now. Even if that means not getting to Arlington, which that should be the goal every year is to get there and win the damn conference. But
Right.
man, 10-2, I would chalk that up as a pretty successful year one, considering all of the turnover going on campus right now. I would take that, and I would guess the vast majority of rational Texas fans would take that too.
I agree. And there's always going to be a team that pops up that starts just going off, right? And all of a sudden you look up and you're looking at the standings and that person may be 5-0 or 6-0 and they're like, are they for real? Blah blah blah. And like teams, ebb and flow. But just where we're looking at it from our vantage point right now, I think that's kind of the baseline we're looking for. Year one with this team is aesthetically pleasing
Yeah.
because even that 7-3, and I know we didn't play Kansas, LSU, and South Florida, so we missed like 3 games. But like even with those close losses, there's too many times where we're just like, is the other team beating us or are we beating ourselves? Which one is it?
Yeah.
We can't be
That's
asking ourselves that question anymore.
agreed 100%. Now, this is a results oriented business. So ultimately, what fans are
Wins
going
and
to look
losses.
at is records. But yeah, this team can vastly improve on the eye test this year. They got to stop the dumb penalties. They got to stop the special teams miscues. They got to stop shooting themselves in the foot in opportune moments. I mean, the narrative, we talk about narratives that need to change with Texas football. We talked about the draft picks, right? How we just have to end that drought of not having any first round picks around here. Texas needs to stop playing down the competition. That was an
Mm.
end of Mac problem. That was a Charlie problem. That was a Tom problem. Got to stop playing down the competition. Even the wins last year, even some of the wins last year and some of the wins the last 4 years were not aesthetically pleasing because you are letting way less talented teams hang around way too often. We talked about it with Tom Herman a bunch. We knew how good of a coach he was as an underdog, but not great as a favorite. When you're a Texas, you're going to be the favorite more often than not. You can't continually play down to your competition. Another thing Sark's got to put to bed.
The Austin Statesman had a picture of me the year we beat Kansas. What was it, 50-48? And it looked like I was in the middle of having a stroke. Um,
Oh, you got to send me that, dude. I don't know if I've
I
seen
will
that
s I
before.
will send it to you. It was but it's one of those things where it's just like, I shouldn't feel that way about those kind of games anymore.
Yeah.
Stop it. If for anything else, like, let's just, and I know we're kind of venting here as fans and trying to get that out. And I feel like with the killers we have on this staff, that helps, and that's going to help the first round thing. Bo Davis ain't here to play around, right? And Kyle Flood ain't here to play around, and Jeff Banks ain't here to play around. Those people are killers. They're the step on the neck type of dudes that want to beat people 48. That somebody laughed at them the wrong way or looked at them the wrong way at Vanderbilt, and then they go send a message. That's the type of stuff we need to have at Texas. So I'm glad we got those people here, at least amongst the staff. But now we got to overcome that whatever that funk is on our culture to execute as a program. But
Yeah. I don't want Longhorn Network telling me how good Kansas's quarterback is ever again. You remember that? I mean, LHN was
oh,
raving about Carter Stanley as he's putting
Carter
up,
Stanley, he might be a late round pick
but
though.
I'm just like, so like I don't know I don't know how many people on YouTube know this, but my listeners on the Horn know this. Like I'm from Kansas. I was born in Overland Park, Kansas, which is like less than an hour away from Lawrence, and I've had a lot of family go to KU over the years. So I'm Texas first, no question about that. But I also root for Kansas, and I also torment and torture myself by watching every Kansas football game every year. Like I think I'm the only person in the entire state. Hell, I might be the only person in the entire world who like watches every second of every Kansas football game. But yeah, I'd watched Carter Stanley play a bunch, and I'm like, dude, this guy sucks. And then I hear LHN talk about how he's like the second coming of Peyton Manning, and I'm like, what? No, we're just that bad. Like Texas is just that bad. This is not Kansas being good at football. Okay, can we stop this? So the hope is, yeah, you don't have any more embarrassing pictures taken of you in the Austin American Statesman, and we don't have to hear LHN announcers tell us how good somebody from Kansas is. If we can get over those two things, then we're moving in the right direction.
Completely agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Brad Kellner. You can check him out on 1049 The Horn on the triple option. They do a fantastic job every single day, 3 to 7, giving us. I got y'all plugged in on the Horn app, on the website where y'all stream. Doing a phenomenal job over there. And don't forget, you see it on the screen. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Let's get him to 1,000 subscribers. He is putting out more and more content. 2 days in a row, he's posted.
Come
So
on now.
Brad's blessing the people.
Yeah, I appreciate the love, Steven. Always enjoy coming on this channel. Let's get Steven up to 10,000 subscribers. Y'all got to make it happen for Steven and Tran. They're so close, only a couple hundred away.
So
Y'all
close.
make sure you subscribe yourself, but also tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell another friend. Get these guys up to 10K. They deserve it. They've been working hard for a long, long time. So appreciate the love, Steven. Always fun catching up with you, man. I hope all is well with you and yours, and hopefully we get the chance to do this again soon.
The feelings mutual, BK. I appreciate you, brother. Remember, horns always up.